part 3, and lastly, the degrees. Okay, the degrees, or the days. There's many ways to identify that energy of that angle, that separation, that those separations of days within a time period in which the sun is in a particular position. So we are tracking by the sun. Okay, that's where we do most of our tracking, especially is when it comes to biblically, because it's very much an emphasis on the sun. So that has everything to do with us, but they don't teach about these things in terms of what it's in terms of their purpose, their will, and how that relates to us individually. That's why we're supposed to use our own intuition, our own observation, our own understanding of these things. And we can do it through these actual systems that we have already gained this knowledge from, if that makes sense. And we use their information to be able to observe information. And that's what the best thing to do to guard our spirits and manipulation, guard against warfare, manipulation, is through knowing, right? Because knowing is a sense of clarity. It's not being blind to things. And that's not just physical with these eyes. It's being blinded by circumstances and things that could happen to fuck us up in our lives. And that's by different behaviors, actions, emotions, thoughts, the way we treat people, the way that we think. The way that we think is very important. It's very much a spiritual thing. It doesn't have to be spiritual. It's just a way of identifying. It's a general way of identifying those energies of the unseen that's happening in lighter forms that we can't perceive through our physical eyes, but we perceive through our other senses. And we let other people give us visual representations of our own energies, and therefore we are disconnected from our own individual I, because we have taken on other people's images and perceptions and adopted other people's beliefs and existence, because we're not connected to the foundation, the mothership, the spirit, our own individual spirit. We don't even acknowledge, most people don't acknowledge spirit, only when they go to church. And then other people don't acknowledge spirit at all by calling themselves atheists and adopt a whole different way of believing. But it doesn't matter what we believe about it. We all have our individual right to believe whatever we want. But at the same time, these universal laws, principles, and systems are still in effect in our everyday existence of life, no matter what we call it. So the best thing to do is to learn about them so you can see for yourself. That's the most important thing, is you, the two, the reflection. Understanding duality is necessary in order to have a deeper connection with life, is because, and it's not even duality. Duality is just a window in order to see through knowledge. It's a way of lifting a veil by understanding through duality, and how that is represented in many different forms. I can represent duality by breaking it into the two: duality by my spirit, my life, living through my physical form. This candle lighter has a physicality. It has a physical form, and it also has a spiritual form that we can identify through purpose, meaning, and reason. I use this, the spiritual aspect of this lighter is I use it to light candles. That's not expressed on this physical form. We interpret it by knowing its purpose, meaning, and reason, and that is a way to identify the spirit behind it. That's just one way to identify it, through knowledge. And it's a way of seeing things in a broader sense through the combination of physical and spiritual forms that we are doing already by just acknowledging what we use this for. But just being able to identify that these things are coexisting in our everyday moment. It just depends on what we're paying attention to. The more you dive into something, is the deeper you get into its spirit, its essence. This is not just the lighter. This can serve many purpose. So it's actually limiting to call this a lighter. But that's the word that we use to identify this form. So it's very much to understand these things, especially when it comes to circles, math, numerology, any type of belief systems. They all are pointing. This is point, point, okay? Pointing. That's identification of a point. An eye, or however you want to see, a point of reference that has everything to do with sight spiritually. Because in order for us to have a spiritual perception of a time, of a memory, we have to have a point of reference, a mirror, a reflection to see off of, and that's spiritually. I hope that makes sense. I hope it does. I don't know who I'm talking to, but it's about seeing being able to see life more expansive than what we are continuing to and very much getting entrapped and binded to other people's way of seeing life, especially when it comes to actual life, because we can't necessarily call what we're doing now living. We're very much surrounded by death and news of death and talking about other people and just very much sickness. People just going through many different circumstances spiritually and through their physical circumstances. So there's many things happening spiritually, especially when it comes to this enforcement that we're going through. I'm very much going to speak on that because that's not a natural way of being. This is very much these rules and regulations. And I can't remember if I talked about the foundational principles of law based on natural law, natural principles, and that is the principle of liberty and freedom, and you being able to live your life without the influence, not influence, but influence. That's a manipulation word, but without the infringement of anybody else's will. And that's the purpose of law. When those agreements have been broken, and the law is supposed to secure our individual freedoms and find out which person is the one that infringed on those freedoms. So, but it's turned into a whole legal system that is based off of creation and artificial insemination of man into natural principles, and people not learning through their educational system, so much so that they think that they're supposed to be educated, and nobody has to. That's a limited worldview, a limited way of seeing how people are supposed to be, how people are supposed to grow up, and not even respecting the importance of actual intelligence. Intelligence lets you know how to use education. Education doesn't teach you intelligence. That's something that is ingrained, that we all have the ability to have. We all have our many forms of intelligence. It's about understanding what intelligence is and how it is expressed in many different ways, but only identifying intelligence as being educated is not it's not the only view in the world, and it's also a way of seeing how limiting it is, because there's a lot more intelligent people that are not part of that educational systems or hold these titles that we give these fuckers that don't deserve them, just based off of a title, because we're not looking at the spirits of people. We're looking at these titles, and somehow they become acceptable just based off a title and the instant trust and agreements. And then when those agreements are not fulfilled, we have, for some reason, are not understanding why. We're not looking at the spirit of the being. We're not looking at the spirit of the entity, the things that we are interacting with. And we know that these school systems are failing our children's daily. We know these things, but yet we still participate in them and wonder why they're not serving us to our best ability. So it's very much has to do with responsibility, and responsibility is a spiritual thing, because if you are not responsible, your ass will get kicked by karma. And how it happened in natural law. We all, it's our system of growth, learning, maturing. right? So we know not to keep doing the same shit again. And if we keep doing the same shit, we're going to have the same type of experience because we're living within that realm of reality, unless we decide to get ourselves out of circumstances, or we can wait for Jesus. Okay? But Jesus is in you, and all these books and Buddha telling you stop, don't worship, don't make no idol of me. No, it's not about the idol, because it's the emphasis is it's in you. It's up to us individually to do things, to experience our life, to live how we want to live, because nobody else is going to do that for us. It's up for us if we want to get ourselves out of a different existence. But the best way to do it is through education. And when we can identify that we have been lacking very much when it comes to education in these institutional systems and these religious systems, by seeing natural principles and get to understanding what exactly we are reading, then we can be in a better position, be in the better mental state in order to make actual changes. And it happens individually, on an individual level. It's just if we can do an observation of nature and how nature takes place over time and how things evolve over time. Species, we are also a species, very much connected to nature, and that's spiritually as well, because consciousness evolves. Consciousness has everything to do with the spirit and what you're conscious of, because you only can be conscious of the spirit if you are paying attention, are aware, but you're still going to be living and breathing and living your life, whether you're aware of it or not. So we are very much time, we are our own time device. We all have individual times. We all are on different times. We are as many different time cycles. We go through many cycles in our lives. And we are very much connected to the cycles of life going around us, because we are that. It is not separate, only when we choose to see ourselves separate from it. And usually that's through desensitizing. We've been desensitized in so many ways. Where we're not able to perceive the many forms of spirit happening all around us. It is cold. But we're in the times now, and it's definitely necessary, because we're living in Babylon. And I'm not saying Babylon as I'm saying exactly what Babylon is. I'm giving my interpretation of that Babylon energy, because that Babylon carries an energy through story form in which we can communicate that time, that experience. Okay, that name, that title that we get, that was given to Babylon, is a way that we can explain those energies that we are experiencing. And for me personally, it seems like everybody's mind, nothing makes sense anymore in this existence that we live in, and not even terms of information. And so this is why this is a good way to connect to natural information, so you can see the source of truth, wholeness of source, and the artificial. People are not able to life is so artificial now that people can't even recognize artificial in each other anymore. People are so uh, uh, just cool with being fake. It's just cool to be fake, and cool to take in fake and do fake and be fake. And we've come to accept that and adopt that as a way of being, just like it is what it is. And it's no judgment, because we all are on a different path. But at some point, we have to know that in order to spiritually build, if we want to get ourselves out of circumstances and situations, especially when it comes to a sense of growth and being in harmony with nature, with source of God, that we would want to pay attention. I just forgot what I was going to say. But we'd want to pay attention to these aspects of life, nature, and the process and the journey, and where we get these energies and how they are told through different story forms, and how not one is more superior than the other. And that's another concept, is superiority. Just that word alone gets people to go down through many different lost paths in thinking and living. And it manifests into our third dimensional reality just based off of a thought, an idea, an ideology, a narrative. That's why it's dangerous, especially when you adopt somebody else's with the lack of knowing.